so blessed to be able to rub shoulders with you. This is gonna sound narcissistic, it is not. I'm humbled by the fact that this started in this room 13 years ago because I wanted to give back to the community, because this is where I was raised. Every day for me is a blessing. But this, I'm telling you, what we're doing here, it is such a blessing to work with people that love community and want to help businesses and grow and such. And the type of people that you are, I plan to do this till I drop dead. Because every day's a vacation, it's not work for me. I get tired, but it's not. Anyway, enough said. I'm just saying, you can have that same experience because you get into part of business, what you put into it. And there's a lot to put in right now. Thank you.
All right, Heart of Business, how are we doing today, guys?
Good morning.
Good. So I want to tell you guys a story. Actually, a couple weeks ago, I went to a funeral, and it was actually a beautiful funeral. It was somebody who was 101 years old who attended my church. Right, just an amazing woman, loved the Lord and everything like that. But so I go to her funeral, and I didn't get the chance to eat all day, right? And so around 2 o'clock was the first time that I got a chance to eat. And so of course you got the little sandwiches, right, and you got the little snacks, and you got grandma's favorite dessert and everything, right? And so I decided, hey, it's time to go, right? And so I'm eating sandwiches, I'm having the snacks, and I'm taking more dessert than everybody else, right? And so I go home, and all of a sudden that night, I've got terrible stomach pains, right? I am just in pain, and I can't go to work the next day. I can't do anything about it, right? And I had scheduled to meet with Bernie just as like a, hey, let's meet, right? Let's go talk about our businesses together. Let's have a cup of coffee. I'll come down to your office, okay? So I'm having these pains all week, right? So from Saturday until Monday was when I met. It was on a Monday. I'm having these terrible stomach pains, right? So what do you know? It's a good time that I'm going to meet Bernie. So he actually takes me back, and I don't want to spoil what he does, right? But he actually takes me back, and in 15 minutes, he didn't run any big diagnostic tests. He didn't stick me with any needles or anything. I don't even know really how he figured it out, right? But I had two problems going on that I had already been previously diagnosed with by my doctor, right? I have a little bit of fatty liver because I'm a big guy, right? Non-alcoholic type thing. And I have a little bit of high blood pressure because of, my weight, once again. So my heart's not great, right? And in 15 minutes, Bernie could tell me, you got two problems that are major, your heart and your liver, right? And I'm like, how do you even know that, okay? So I actually went through the full gambit with Bernie, and he found out that the whole reason I was having problems was because I was eating corn and corn-based products. Not because that corn's necessarily bad for everybody, right? But because I have an intolerance to corn that I didn't know about. So I highly encourage you to go see Bernie. I imagine that whatever he's going to share with you today is going to be very valuable. But that's the whole reason that I asked him to speak, right? Is because he actually helped me. I've changed a little bit of my diet. I'm down, some weight, down a belt notch and everything. Feeling really good, really healthy, healthier than I felt in a long time and happier than I felt in a long time, right? And it was all due to just changing my diet a little bit, following a little bit of Bernie's advice, right? And so I really recommend you guys to pay attention, listen, soak up whatever you can. Go ahead, Bernie.
Thank you. So, well, thanks for having me. So there's, and I hope everyone can hear me okay because I'm known to be a soft talker, but there's a blue sheet that is really going to summarize everything that I'm going to talk about, and then also the pink sheet. So those are kind of be your references to have after. So thanks for having me, and just before I get into it, I'm just going to give you a quick little background. So I've kind of had two careers so far. The first one was in the corporate world, and I had 20 plus years of experience in both marketing and strategic planning. And then one day I got the magic moment of getting walked into a side office and telling me that my job was being eliminated, and then it was time for a career too. So it was about 2006 that I transitioned from the corporate world into having my own business. So the background for that is I have a PhD in nutrition from Clayton College, then I have business degrees from Northwestern and University of Pennsylvania. So why did I get into this? One thing is I also used to be a little overweight back in the corporate days, about 185 pounds and feeling not so well. So I want to inspire other people to be healthier, to educate people, but also really to cut through the hype. You know, there's a lot of BS in marketing, and there's a lot of BS in nutrition, and fake news was way prior to 2016, okay? It's been around for a long time. So here's why. This is one of my first clients. Here's what she said. I got my life back. I was 39 and my joints hurt all the time. The medical community didn't know what to do with me. I suffered from chronic fatigue, inflammation in my joints and muscles, could not sleep through the night. I was on an emotional roller coaster with high anxiety, had cravings for carbs and chocolate, IBS, couldn't lose weight, and no sex drive. In 6 weeks, I lost over 25 pounds. I have more energy. I'm up every morning at 6:30 before I can ever get up before 9. My emotions are stable. My anxiety is minimal. My stress is reduced, and I've regained my sex drive. Most importantly, probably, right? I've regained my life. Right? So this is, you know, there's a lot of joy in helping people to come over things where particularly, they say, where the medical community doesn't know what to do with them. It's very, very common. So now I'm going to kind of get into the meat here. So essentially, you know, we don't come with an owner's manual. People really don't know what to do with our body, but it's actually very simple. Our body is basically a processor, okay? And it's trying to be in balance. And it's trying to manage your blood sugar. It's trying to manage all these different minerals and things that you need. But what's really important to remember is your body is not a test tube, right? So when people are giving you science sometimes, that's a test tube, right? That's not what's happening inside of you, because inside of you there's a lot of other variables that they're not accounted for in a test tube, okay? So a good example of that for people is people will say, oh, you know, soy is a very good protein for you because soy has all of the amino acids. Well, that is true, but the problem is that you can't actually digest soy very well, okay? Because soy has certain aspects to it that basically suppress your digestion. So yes, it has the amino acids, but good luck getting them. Okay? The only way to actually get them is if it's fermented, so something like tempeh, for example. Okay? So the other thing is our body requires real food to function, right? I mean, that's how it was designed. It was designed a long time ago, you know, a lot of these things didn't exist, right? Our body, we are of nature, okay? And we're supposed to kind of put nature into our body, and when we don't, we can have some conflicts. So the good news, though, in all of it is really your body is designed for self-repair. It knows what to do if you kind of get out of the way. And you gave the perfect example, right? So there's a sensitivity to corn. You stopped eating corn, and some of the side effects of the corn have disappeared. Okay? It's that simple. But now we're going to get to the main topic and how this all relates. So stress is the root of all evil, okay? Right? And I'm sure no one here is stressed. Okay. So yeah, if you're not stressed, raise your hand. Right? So stress then becomes what I'll call the main cause of dis-ease, okay, not feeling well and poor health. And there's a lot of stress that we're aware of, right? We're aware of stress in our personal lives. We're aware of relationships. We're aware of work. We're aware of the news we get that stresses us, right? All those things we know about. But back to what you were talking about earlier, there's also stress we're not aware of, and we get a fair amount of stress just from what we're eating and what we're drinking, okay? So what then happens is we kind of get in this chronic stress response, okay? So whether we want to be there or not, so these are all the things that stress leads to, and if I refer on like your blue sheet, you'll kind of see those things here in the middle. So these are all the things that will happen just because you're stressed, okay? So you will gain weight if you're stressed, okay? So the reason for that, and everything has an underlying reason, is that one of the hormones that you produce when you're stressed is called cortisol. If your cortisol levels stay high or your cortisol is engaged, it basically pushes a button that you're in stress and you need to hold on to everything, so you will hold on to your fat. So you have high stress, you will gain weight even no matter what else you're doing. Okay? I've had people that have been on detoxification programs, and they couldn't lose weight because they were so stressed. Right? So a bunch of other things are going to be fatigue, be tired, bad sleep, all kinds of hormonal imbalances, and those lead to all kinds of issues. Again, I'm going to grab a blue sheet. I tried to sum it all up so you can see here is what's happening in the body. Here's all these other hormones coming in. So then that can also affect your digestion. People have constipation, diarrhea, acid reflux, IBS, Crohn's, colitis, depressed immune system, allergies, sensitivities, asthma, acne, the liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, gallstones, heart disease, #1 killer still, diabetes, chronic pain, inflammation, emotional imbalances, anxiety, depression type things, right? So all this stuff is all coming from stress, okay? And what that blue chart tries to do is just show how all this stuff is interacting, okay? And one of the things you'll see that these are covering all different parts of your body, and it's kind of important to remember that the only place where you actually see your digestive system and your immune system and let's say your cardiovascular system separate is in a medical textbook, right? Nowhere else, because that's not really, again, the body is just totally interacting. Everything works together. One system impacts the other. Whoever that weakness is, can then transpire into another system. Okay? So part of what I do in the office is try to figure out where is this actual point that you need to start with. Okay? So I'm just going to look at some of the stress factors. So the first one is bad food, right? We hear about this all the time. Sugar, I should add on there artificial sweeteners, all kinds of refined foods, bad fats, alcohol, tobacco. All these things will have an effect on your system. And you've heard the old adage, you are what you eat, right? I mean, what you're putting in your body is what it has to work with. So if you're putting in your body a bunch of chemicals that were never really even around before, it's going to create some havoc, right? That only makes sense. A second point that's important is that you are what you eat eats. Okay, so what's going into the animals and what's going into the plants is also going into you. Okay, so one of the big things you'll hear about today, you hear a lot about like gluten, right? How bad gluten is for you. Okay, so is gluten really bad? I don't know. If you have people who have gluten intolerances, they go over to Europe and they have all the bread and beer they want, and they have no problem. Okay? So what's kind of the difference? The real difference is that a lot of the quote gluten here also has a lot of pesticide in it. Okay, and the pesticide is actually probably the real root cause of the problem, because the pesticide has Roundup, and Roundup does a lot of things, and one of them is actually it's actually patented also as an antibiotic. Okay, so if you're getting all this Roundup slowly, you're also almost on like an antibiotic all the time, and it also is creating problems in your gut. Okay? So I once wrote an article about that, and the local Roundup person got quite upset and wrote a counterpoint. That was fun. So you also are what you digest, right? So you can be eating really healthy foods, but you still have to be able to digest them. Okay? And the fourth one I like to say a little tongue-in-cheek, we eat what we are. So that's because we're all so sweet. We want to have a lot of sugar, right, to keep us happy, right? But the reality is in us, and we've probably, we all have like, fungus and yeast and bacteria, right? You've probably heard of candida overgrowth, all that kind of stuff, right? We all have that stuff in us, but it can get out of balance, right? And one of the things that a lot of that feeds on is sugar, right? So I remember one client was going to do this, she started this, anti-candida diet, and she's doing it for about a week, and then she tells me, actually, she didn't get it from me. I got this thing from Whole Foods, and I've been doing it for about a week, and all of a sudden I started to feel really bad. So I said, so you stopped, right? Oh, yeah, right? So she stopped because she was having all this stuff die off, and it wasn't really a proper detox because she didn't have any support for that. And then she went back to her diet, started giving them what they like again, and all of a sudden everybody's happy, okay? So that's that one. And at the end of the day, practice balance and moderation, right? I'm not going to tell you, hey, never go drink wine again, right? Or don't have coffee or all that kind of stuff because, you know, it's fine. But I will tell you, if you have a yeast infection and you keep drinking wine, it's never going to go away.
I think one of the things that he told me, right, was about the corn. He hadn't even shared with me yet about the corn. And he said, well, when you snack, what do you eat? And I said, well, I like a potato chip, but if I don't have a potato chip, I reach for the corn chips. And he says, never reach for corn chips again.
Well, that's it, right? Because there is a problem.
Not to eat potato chips.
Right.
He just said, you know.
Right. But now you have to watch out for the potato chips that actually are dusted with cornstarch.
Exactly.
So the second big factor I meant is stress. So these are some of the, you know, again, the work stresses, relationship stresses, things that are in the environment. I already talked about the pesticides, but all the antibiotics and hormones. It's like all in the drinking water, contaminated water. Another great one is exercise. Okay, because a lot of people actually they do improper exercise. Okay, because basically if you over-exercise, anytime you exercise, it's creating a stress, right? So some stress is good, but too much will not be good, okay? So one of my typical clients is going to be a 45 to 50-year-old woman who comes in and says, you know, I don't understand. I work out with my personal trainer every day and I'm gaining weight. Right? What are you doing? Oh my God, well, we do an hour of this, an hour, you know, so they're doing too much, and that will cause you to gain weight because you're just stressed. If we have the immune system challenges, we talked a little bit about that, things that are in us. EMFs, the phones, they cause kinds of issues too. Some people have bad reactions to them. Like for me, if I hold the phone by my head, I get a headache. I have to keep it away. Okay? So this is they'll interrupt your sleep and things like that. Supposedly it's even worse now with the 5G. And as one of my mentors said, we're all living in like a microwave now, okay? So, and there's a whole other path with that, which I won't even get into, but a certain thing that happened a couple of years ago, some people link it very closely with the beginning of the implementation of the 5Gs. So if you ever want to read about electricity and health, there's a great book on that too. Dental work, believe it or not, your root canals can be a source of an ongoing infection. And then, of course, just basically other emotional, spiritual stress, right? So there's a lot of things that can stress us. And, of course, as I alluded to earlier, the hormones, or as actually that person who I had the quote from, she termed them her hormones, which I happen to like. So, again, remember, everything is interacting. So if one thing gets out of whack, it puts pressure on other things, and everything has to adapt. So your body, in reality, is your friend. Okay, but sometimes it just can't keep up with all the challenges that you're given it. So you basically have 4 choices, right? These are your tools for a healthier lifestyle and a way to decrease your stress. So we can do it through diet, through supplements, through exercise, relaxation. These are really 4 tools that are readily available. So this will be the 1-minute version of our lecture on what is food, right? But essentially, you know, we've all heard protein, carbohydrates, fat, vitamins, minerals, water. These are your basic nutrients that you need to consume to live. You will get all kinds of questions, all kinds of people saying, have too much protein, too much fat, blah, 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 right? You know, you'll hear everything, high carb, low carb, you know? The bottom line is, first thing is most people just don't drink enough water, okay? A lot of different symptoms that we have are just because you don't drink enough water. And you want to have clean water. Coffee and soda really aren't water. Okay. And a general rule of thumb, although I don't like, you know, is about 1/2 of your body weight in ounces of water, okay, per day. However, I will give this guideline, right? Because if you eat a lot of vegetables, you're getting a lot of water, right? So to me, I kind of look at like, you know, your urine output, right? I mean, if you're running to pee every half hour, you're probably drinking too much water. We need a balanced diet. What that balanced diet really for everyone is kind of different because all those things do things in your body, but at the end of the day, it's really our choices of how much of each type of food we're eating, but also the quality of the food, and that's where I kind of get into the, you know, yes, the organic is probably going to be better for you and things like that. Are these 15 foods in your diet? Right, so here's some basic healthy foods that, you know, you want to eat. It's fruit, Okay, blueberries and apples, just because they don't maybe have as much sugar as some other things, like let's say bananas or pineapple, for example. Vegetables like leafy greens, broccoli, sweet potato. But one note, remember I said you need to be able to digest foods. So outside of like lettuce, most of those leafy greens and broccoli, they really need to be cooked to some degree, like steamed or stir-fried, so you can process them better. A lot of people got into kale in the smoothies, right? Everyone should have kale, 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 and then oh man, my gut is awful after the kale because it's really hard to digest. Okay, it needs to be cooked. So when we talk about animal protein, things healthier again, where the beef has been grass-fed, the chicken is pastured, more grown naturally. If you walk into a store and you see it says chickens fed vegetarian, I got news for you: chicken is not a vegetarian. Okay, so if that chicken is eating vegetarian, it's really not eating the healthy diet for them. And also, chickens are really, small, right? They're not, right? I mean, some of them got, these humongous chicken breasts that's like, could be from a turkey for all you know. So wild salmon, wild fish, eggs are good too. Plant protein, quinoa, almonds, for example, and then we've mentioned a little about the fats. So these are kind of 15 healthy foods that, one of the things I find with people is, it's easy if you start eating good foods, you tend to not need as much of the bad foods, okay? Because you're focused on eating these things, you'll be fuller and you won't be looking for the other stuff. Proper exercise. So again, there's types of exercise that I prefer that are more high intensity training. There's a thing called the 5 Tibetans, which are 5 little exercises, which are, those?
They're amazing.
Yeah, so they're really good. So I guess my point is you don't need to be working out 5 hours a day, every day. But it's important to find an exercise that you like and do it, okay? But over-exercising will cause a lot of stress. So we talked about diet, we talked about exercise, just other ways to reduce stress. Get, walking, right? That's pretty simple. Get fresh air, right? That used to be one of the treatments for so many things, just get fresh air. Massages are good for relieving stress. Getting more sleep. Get a little more organized in your life. And believe it or not, we were really also not designed to multitask, right? That's a recipe for disaster. Do things, focus on one thing to get it done correctly. I'm going to talk a little more about changing your inner energy, even things like deeper breathing and visualizations, okay? So deep breathing, for example, it's how your body works, okay? I won't get into all the details, but essentially, by doing a deep breathing exercise or properly, you're basically shifting your body out of a stress response. Okay? So to change your inner energy is one of them is to lose the energy vampires. You know what those are? Those are like some of your friends and relatives that just suck you dry, right? And sometimes we need to kind of move away from some of that. Next, asking yourselves different, little questions, like, what did I accomplish today? Why is that important to me? What else can I do to progress in my life, and things like that. Acknowledge someone daily, volunteer your services. So these are other ways to kind of help reduce your stress and change that. Kind of a simple recap: drink more water, eat the 15 foods, exercise efficiently, and allow yourself some rest and relaxation. I had one of my, so we moved here a couple of years ago from Wisconsin, so I still have a bunch of clients in Wisconsin. I go back every 3 months or so. So I have someone, and she's just like, my blood pressure is totally out of control, and I can't, and she's even taking medications that she doesn't really like to do. And I said, I know she's got so much stress. I said, you know what? You want my honest advice? Just tell everyone they're on their own for a week and get away, because they're doing it to you. You need to take care of yourself. And I think that sometimes people neglect is you need to take care of yourself. Like you may think, oh, I got to take care of all my kids, and I got to take care of my partner, all that. But if you're not taking care of yourself, you're ultimately really not going to be able to do that, right? I just want to, again, a little bit about what happens in the office, so some client success stories. The whole idea with me is to find the natural solution for what's going on and what the underlying cause is. So I had several kids, 7 to 10 years old, that were identified with Crohn's. Okay, Crohn's is an inflammation, right, and digestive. But why? So you have to ask questions. When did it first occur? Oh, in Mexico. Oh, when we were on the plane coming back from such and such, right? Well, that gives you a clue, right? They were in places that kind of have like more, more parasites. So these kids had parasites. You get rid of the parasites, and guess what? They start to grow again. Magic, right? Other than Cody, I've had other people that had corn problems. So this one woman would say, "Oh, that's all women hormonal stuff, blah blah blah." She had a corn sensitivity. She took out the corn, and she like a new person.
That's where all my women's problems came from too.
And people don't hear about corn. You hear about gluten, you hear about dairy, but corn is actually quite serious as well, and it also tends to run in families. From what I've seen, there seems to pass down. Another person had juvenile arthritis. That was a gluten sensitivity. A lot of eczema, right? That's typically can be dairy. IBS, again, parasites, yeast or fungus, bloating, or virus, and so all these things that we just try to accept. Really, there's a reason that it's doing.
I love my corn chips.
Well, you may be okay with them. I don't know. You may be fine with corn chips. That's the point. These things are very individualized, right? Everyone, yeah. So hopefully you're okay with them. But everybody could have a different thing that they're sensitive to.
Leon, you're sensitive to rutabaga.
And then what typically will happen is sometimes people have a lot of sensitivities, but there's kind of like an underlying one that basically like started it. Okay, it started opening up the holes in the gut, and then these other things people became sensitive to. So I use in the office a couple of things. One of them is called muscle testing or nutrition response testing. I don't know if anyone ever heard of it, but it's kind of weird, but it works. If you want to read more about it, there's like little things in here. But as I tell people, I wouldn't be in business if it didn't work. But also I'll look at your blood test, and we can do urine test, saliva test, hair tests, all kinds of things. And that's important too. So you can look in a blood test. A lot of times you'll be told everything is normal. Okay, so that's a true statement. But do you know what normal is? Right. So normal is the bell curve. Okay, so that means you're in that 95%. That's quote normal. But then you also have to ask yourself, well, who's getting blood tests? Well, people who think maybe there's something wrong. Okay, so that's kind of biasing that population a little bit more. So I have references that kind of say, here's where healthy people are in ranges. So you can kind of look at those ranges to kind of see, okay, because normal doesn't mean healthy, it just means normal. And even by looking at the blood test, you can actually see what I would say is called like the parasite pattern. Okay, so you can see certain things in how your white blood cells are distributed as to what may be going on. So there's a lot of information that you can use and do that. So that's kind of me. So that was about 7 hours condensed into 30 minutes. If anybody has any questions.
So what about vitamins?
Oh yeah, I should have talked about that. So vitamins is actually probably one of my favorite areas of hype and whatever, fake news. So I'm a big believer in supplements, but they need to be what you need, okay? And they also need to be natural products. Okay, so most of the vitamins that you buy in stores, they're all synthetic vitamins, right? So you take this Super B and you pee a neon yellow for 3 days, right? Because your body says, ugh, I don't need this, right? So the supplements that I use in the office are going to be from real stuff. Okay, so they're either food-based or they're plant-based, be homeopathic type things, but they're all real stuff. You also like won't be like mega dosing on them, you know. I like to use the vitamin C example. Like, what will people say? Oh, well, you should take 2,000 milligrams of vitamin C. Okay, so first of all, that vitamin C is really ascorbic acid, which is basically what is it? Two chemicals, you know, slapped together in a lab in China. Okay, it's not what's actually in vitamin C. And what true vitamin C is, right? So if you have, let's say, someone like scurvy, remember that, right? It's a vitamin C deficiency. If you give someone who has scurvy ascorbic acid, they'll die, right? Because they need all the other things that are actually vitamin C. And then I kind of come back to creation. How, to have, 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C, how big do you think that orange would be? Right? So there's no way that you would consume that in anything, right? Or they'll tell you, well, you can know how much vitamin C to have if you get diarrhea, right? You may as well say, well, take as much, and then when you get diarrhea, that's when you should, maybe you've had enough. It's like, well, that's a pretty extreme reaction, right? So there's a lot of crap in supplements. A lot of times, they also, and herbs is a good example, right? So you'll hear like echinacea is good for the immune system, okay? But it's a specific part of the plant that needs to be in certain, amounts, okay? So one of the companies that I work with is called MediHerb. They're out of Australia, and it's an herbal company. So they did an experiment once with their echinacea versus all the others on the market as to how many of theirs versus the others you would need, right, to get, that amount. So one of theirs, the best someone else did was like 5 pills, and most of them were like 15 to 20 pills, right? So it can say echinacea, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get that therapeutic, effect on you. Okay, it's the same thing like when you buy all these powders and they list like a million things. I mean, that's great that it's in there, but it's not a therapeutic amount, right? I mean, it's a little, it's a tab of this, a tab of that. It's not really going to really do what it's supposed to. So supplements are really good if they're the right ones for the right people, and that's basically what people will come in the office with bag loads, right? And I'll just, that's bad. But if it's good, I'll tell them, but a lot of it just, people look at Dr. Google. What should I, I've got blah, blah, blah. What should I do? And you get this laundry list. And that's what you find from the muscle testing, that most of the stuff you don't need. And you need, so much. And I'll give one more thought on that. So a lot of things, remember I talked about the balance of minerals, okay? And so copper and zinc basically work antagonistically. Right? So if you have too much copper, it can deplete your zinc. And I've been reading lately, actually a lot of mental health is tied to not having enough zinc, which is interesting, as well as your immune system and all that. So let's say, you're out of balance. Something is going on, okay? So you take this multivitamin, and it's got, the quote, balanced amount of zinc and copper that you need. So what good is that doing you, right? If you're unbalanced and you put a balance on top of that, you're still unbalanced, right? So when people, when they come in, it's like we kind of tailor, these 4 or 5 things, that's your multivitamin.
Is there any companies better than others that you buy your,
Yes, so there are companies that are better than others because they are more like practitioner brands. So that's what I tend to use. So I use like Standard Process and MediHerb. They're again kind of more food-based. I'll use Designs for Health. They kind of have a mixture. They're a little more chemically, but sometimes you need that. A company called Systemic Formulas, which is all herbal. Company Physica Energetics, which is herbal tinctures and homeopathics. And then I've got the other one. There's another company that I use that's also like herbal stuff. So I try to find the best. Best. I have another new line that's like mushroom based. So when you ask about supplements, another good thing is like people, oh, you should use a probiotic, right? Everybody, oh, probiotic, right? You got to have good bacteria, right? But like, how do you know which one you need, right? Because if you have too much of a good bacteria, that also can throw you off. So in my office, I mean, I'll show people. See these 7 things right here? those are all different probiotics. See those 3 over there? That's more probiotics. And only maybe one of them is actually going to be the one that will resonate with your body when we do the muscle testing.
Oh, I guess. So I was just wondering how to get vitamin C then, and if there's a certain brand of that we should buy. Because you said that there's the acid with it that could be bad.
All right, so the first question you have to say is like, well, do I really need vitamin C? Am I getting enough just from eating the fruits and vegetables and things that have vitamin C naturally?
How do you know if you have enough though?
Well, you can. There's different ways. Yeah, come in and see me. Well, the first thing would be probably just like, are you getting sick a lot, right? Right. So if you get sick very frequently, then your immune system probably needs some help, and that could be vitamin C. A lot of times it's also vitamin D. It could be other things. Okay. So that would be, so you kind of look for you can look for other, like, quote, symptoms of vitamin C deficiency. Bleeding, gums, that kind of stuff, bruise easily, those are other types of things, okay? So, the way that they, back in the day, figured out these vitamins is basically they did experiments on, animals. They took certain things away and they kind of saw, like, what would happen, so they kind of could, okay, so these are symptoms associated with B, and that's kind of how they were designing the different vitamins that, oh, they saw this and it became this vitamin and down the path. Any other questions?
Okay, I have one more. So the mitochondria,
Yeah, mitochondria.
that is a new thing that's hitting a lot of the nutritional health things. What's your opinion on that one? And how do you, with the aging, I might be in that group, barely, but how do you age well? Because they say it's a lot to do with your loss of your mitochondria.
So a lot of these fads come and they come and they go, right? But I mean, the mitochondria are basically what are providing the power in your cells, and then there's different things that power them. There's this whole the ATP side. There's also, again, but where does it come? It comes from nutrients, right? So like my approach would be, okay, well, first of all, are you actually needed, right? Are there, is there a part of your body that's weak? Do you need those nutrients, right? You could come in and I have a list of, well, all these things are good for your mitochondria, and then you can actually check to see, is that true? But, so there's truth to it, but the question is, what do you really need to do to remedy it, So, but yeah, I mean, they're a part of the cell, and that's what they do, but they've been there a long time.
All right, well, let's give Bernie 2 high fives.